I joined a techno identity solution. In techno identity solution, I'm doing work as a software engineers. Then after I join a overlays, and in overlays I'm doing work as a software engineers, and mainly I'm doing work in the backend side. The project is overlays, so in overlays it's based on the data, and we are doing work on the data related things. Okay, yeah, that's all about me.
Okay. Shall we start from the core Java concept?
Yeah,
Do you know about the Java 8 feature?
yes.
Please explain with example.
Okay, so can you share my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, Java 8 features is something like Java 8 features. So here in Java 8 features, like they provided some like stream API, Lambda expression, functional interface, try with resources, like so many things. So a stream API, a stream API, then after functional interface, interface, Lambda expression, and like join with a string, so a string joiner. We can say try with resources in the exception handling. Then after you can say like whatever the time or date enhancement. Enhancement. So this is the things, and apart from this, like optional class for handle the exceptions, and like much more. He given the some classes which is able to deflect and minimize our work in the very simple way. So those are the things he given in the Java 8 features like collections classes, collections, array. So these classes having a like inbuilt methods, which is very easily, and we can do the work with these ones. Okay, so I'm going to explain the like any one of them, like Stream API, functional interface, Lambda expressions. So basically, these are the very important features which is coming in the Java 8, and everyone like using these features and utilizing. And also we are using these also optional array classes, string joiners, just try with resources, time with it. So those are I have mentioned here. Those are the very important features of the Java. Okay.
Okay.
In these features, like if you talk about the stream API, so like a stream API is basically it's a API having some more classes which is based on like I will talk about it. So you can say like predicate, filter, map. So filter, predicate, map. So and apart from this, like he given some more way to do like the simple way of the functionality. Okay, so basically what we are doing is like here, if you see in the stream API, we have a predicate. Predicate is nothing but which is given some like function called filter map, and like if you talk about other which is predicate, then after request, and if you talk about something like, so those are the things. So in this you can say like given the like filter map and sort and max mean, so like that so many methods are the theirs in this stream API concept. So basically the stream API concept, it's reduce the lines of the code, it's reduce the line of code and provide the like fast operations, provide fast executions of the code. So not code. So whatever the code we are going to write, so like using the lambda expressions or functional interface, we can concise the code basically. And this is the stream API, which is given the function with, we can say function also here, function. So through that, we can like do the operations on those particular data to simplify our codes. Okay. So those are the basically Java 8 features.
Okay. Please explain the collection framework.
Okay. So, so in the collection, so collection framework is basically we are using to like do the operations on the data. So data, it means like we have a unique, duplicate, and duplicate, heterogeneous, homogeneous type of the data. So like we have a different type of the data, and if you have to operate those data and you have to store those data on the particular way, that is called collections. So for example, I have some data which is integer type of the data like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is something like integer type of data. This is the homogeneous data. Okay. So we have a special classes like collection framework will provide. So collection framework will provide some special classes which is basically able to store those data. Okay. So what we are doing is like if we talk about the collection framework, so collection framework is basically storing our data in one of the better way and provide the flexibility to operate those data in very easily. Okay. So those are the main key components of the like collection framework. Okay. First one is like provide the flexibility to storage of the data. Good way to store the data, we can say. Good way to store data. This is the first point. And second, we can say like operate the data with the method operations on data. So for example, I have some data and I want to sort it. I want to reverse it. I want to do some operations on the data. So collection will provide the method for that, which is nothing but operations. And through that, we can do the easily. Okay. So this is the benefit. Okay.
Okay.
The collection framework and how we can use it. So while using those collection provided the some classes, which is like if you talk about the say, if you talk about the list, if you talk about the queue, so this is the interface he provided. And if you talk about the map, so those are the interfaces. Every interface having our own implemented class. So set having a we can say hash set having a hash set, link hash set, okay, tree set. So like that having a implementations of the sets. Same thing we have a list. So list having a some vector key. Okay. If we talk about the list, so list having a vector queue. We talk about queue or a stack. If you talk about in the list, we can say linked list, array list, linked list, array list. So these are the implemented classes of the list. If you go and talk about the queue, so queue have a DQ. So every class is having a some our own behavior and our own similarity to store the data. So if you talk about the set, so set is able to store the like data which is not duplicate, which is not duplicate, and also the data will be it will not provide and not give the guarantee like your data will be in the sorted orders or it may be the in the insertion orders. So they will not give the guarantee on that. Okay, so data will not be in the sorted insertion orders or data will not store the duplicates. So these are the main features of the sets. So he give the guarantee of the implemented classes. Okay, so every class is having our own responsibility. Like in the tree set, if you store the data, it will sort, it will not store the duplicate. Link hash set will store the data in the insertion order, and it will give the guarantee of the not store duplicate. Hash set will not sort the data. It will sort the data, but it will not give the fully guarantee to in the insertion order. Okay, but it will not store the duplicate. Main thing is it will not store the duplicates. List will store the duplicate. You will also store the duplicate. It's fine. And if you talk about the map, so map is basically it store the data in that key value pair, which is key and value. But if you talk about the set, list, or queue, so they will store the data in only value. It will not store the any key. Internally, it will maintain it. But if you see, you can't say like it will store data as the key. But here you have a key and value. Same thing in the map. If you go inside this map, you can see the hash map, implemented classes, remap, pre-map, and other. If you talk about like hash tables. So like map having our own implemented classes. So map will also store the data and provide the operations on that data very easily. Okay, so I don't want to explain with the like what is the methods is available. So if you talk about the set list queue having a method called add the data, remove the data, store the data, fetch the data, which is get methods. Same thing having a map also like put the data, get the data with the key, with the value. So many things are the theirs in the map also. So the main purpose of this thing is like store and operation on data. So for example, I have some data and randomly I don't want to store the data in anywhere. because maybe they will take the more size, more size. So we have to be careful, like when and which classes I have to take the store the data. So like based on the time complexity and space complexity.
Okay.
So time complexity and space complexity. So time complexity means, for example, I want to store some data which is store and operate the data in the very fastly. So I can go with the preset or something like that. Okay, I can go with array list. It will retrieve the data in the very fast way. So like that, so many way we can discuss and we can do the operation. So basically we can get two benefits if we go with the collection classes, and which is perfect match with our requirement. So we are getting the two benefits when we go with the collection framework, which is the time complexity or space complexity better. Yeah, that's all about.
Okay. What is the need of exception handling?
Okay. So exception handling is basically, if you talk about it, so for example, we have some line of the code, okay, and which is executing, and in the middle of line of the code, if some exception is occurred, for example, in this line, some exception is occurred, exception is occurs. So what we are doing basically, we are writing a code which is protecting this exception. So how it will protect it? Like we are providing some uh, key, and which is having some code which is we are handling the exception. So while handling the exception, we are using the try, catch, we are using the finally keyword, we are using the throw, we are using the throws. So these are the keyword which we are using to handle the exception. So for example, we have some suspension, like we are getting the exception here, this method call, or maybe this line of the code. So what we can do is we can write this line of the code inside the try block. Like if the exception is occurred, maybe it will not occur, maybe it will occur. So what we can do is you can go and do these things. So go and do these things. Do these things. So for example, some exception is occurred. So this is the block of the code which is protecting the exception. How it will protect it? Like basically, whatever the exception will occurs. So this line, if the exception is given, it will do the alternate work. But if exception is not occurred, then it will execute, and this line of the code will not execute, and it will maintain our code executions. It will not stop our application. So this is the basic things which we need to understand, like what is the use of the exception handling, and this is the use basically to handle the exception and continue with our code and provide the alternate way to execute our code, not provide any like stop or any something which is not good. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Explain the REST API with example.
Yeah. So REST API is basically, can I do with the code or in the notepad only? Okay. So REST API. So if we talk about the REST API, so here in the REST API, basically we are creating some application which is related to the Spring Boot. Can I do it in the STS?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we can do is, this is my Eclipse. So simply I can create some Spring Boot starter project, which is like a Spring Boot applications. So basically we can give some test here REST API, and here we can give the dependency which is required. So I can give the wave, dev tools. These are the required dependency we need. Dev tools is not required, but I want. And through that we can go to the next and finish it. So it will create one a Spring Boot application. So what I will do is like so this is the Gradles. Okay, fine, myself. So in the SRC, you can go to the SRC main Java pom.f. So here you can see importing the getting started. So once it is imported, then we can start working on that. So basically in the REST API, we are creating a API which is calling from the UI. So this is the UI. So UI will call our REST API. Our REST API will talk with the database, and it will fetch the data. And based on those data, it will give the return back to the REST API. REST API will give the response to the UI. So this is the things will happen. So REST API basically the imitator, intermediate, which is talking about the UI and database, and it is doing the operations which is required. So if you go here, it's still importing. So how we are creating a REST API is basically, we don't want to talk about the UI, but we need to talk about the database and REST API. So what we can do is we can create one class, which is my REST API, and we can annotate those class with the REST controller. So REST controller is one of the annotation which provide the flexibility to access these particular classes endpoint, which is HTTP method with the UI side directly. Okay, 39% happened. Okay, I'm going to explain here only. So what will happen is like this will provide the accessibility. Also, we can write one more annotation here, which is request mapping. So through that we can map the classes. For example, we have a multiple class, so we can map this class which is my controllers, my REST. Okay, and here we can create the HTTP method which is public a string or response response entity, and I want to send the string, so I can send the string, and here get data, something like that method I can create, and I can create the methods, and here I will call the service, and service to I will call DAO to DB. We can fetch the data, and we can annotate this method with the get mapping, and we can get, you can specify with the get data. So this is the endpoint. So through that and this one, this is the request mapping with the class, and this is the methods we can map, and we can call it whatever the response will call, we can return finally. So return new response entity, and here we can pass like whatever data we need to pass here, we can pass. So this one is basically asking for the type of the data. So I want to send the string. So I can say string, and the data is like this is your data. And in the next argument, we can pass HTTP status, which is okay. So like that, we can send the response. And this is the REST API. Simple REST API I have created, and I show you. Yeah.
Okay. Explain the working of JDBC with Java query.
JDBC.
Yeah.
Okay. So working with JDBC, we need to keep some point in our minds. So working with JDBC, we can say like we need to load the driver. So load driver, load driver. We have to the driver, load the drivers. Then after we have to create the connection to pass the create connection. So creating connection, we have to pass the URL of database, user ID and password. Then after, okay. Then after we have to pass in the third, we can pass the like statement and callable statement or prepared statement or simple statement, anything. Or then after we can execute those query, and then after we can get the result and process the result. Okay, so this is the step we need to follow, and once we get the result, we can store in some collection which is a list, and we can send back to the service like DAO, and then after service to REST API, and REST API it will go to the UI side and we can display. So while working with the join will basically like join will basically it's fetch the records into the multiple tables. So multiple table. So for example, I have two tables or three tables, and I want to fetch the record combining of the two tables. So we can go with the joins. There are few type of the joins like left join, right join, inner join. Okay, so those are the full joins. So those are the type of the joins through that we can fetch the record from the two tables. So for example, we have a tables, we have a B tables, and we want to fetch the records. So from the both tables, we can fetch the records and we can display like that. So this is the things we are doing with the JDBC while working with the join.